Those Were the Days is filmed before a live internet audience.
Internet. Another frontier. These are the recordings of the podcast, Those Were the Days. Its weekly mission to watch classic TV, to seek out all types of shows, and view through a modern lens, to boldly go where plenty of people have been before. So yeah, welcome everybody to Those Were the Days. I joked before the show started if anybody wanted to do the singing part of the Star Trek theme.
I can't.
Nobody tried.
Oh.
See, there we go. So, welcome to Those Were the Days. We're continuing our series on jumping the shark and all the ways we continue to interpret that theme. I'm Audie. I am your captain this week, but I wouldn't be anywhere without my crew, as always. So, joining me on this voyage is First Officer Commander Amy.
All right, so listen, I know I beamed over here in my space miniskirt and my space go-go boots, and I know that we're far enough into the show that you think you know what's going to happen, right? You think that me and Kirk are going to, Yeah, that's not what's going to happen, really, mostly.
Then we have Chief Engineer Lieutenant Commander Steven.
I'm no Morg or iMorg.
And finally, our Science Officer, Lieutenant Commander Travis.
Fascinating, Captain.
So,
Star Trek.
in case you haven't figured it out, we are talking about Star Trek, the original series, Season 3, Episode 1, Spock's Brain. Now, I chose this one because this is the one everybody kind of refers to as where Star Trek kind of jumped the shark and went downhill from here. When you look into it, it's not entirely just the show's fault. Now, I'm not going to go into too much detail about Star Trek because, good Lord, it's a cultural phenomenon. Who doesn't know about Star Trek now? But a couple just bullet points. The original series started on NBC on September 8th, 1965. I was surprised how old this show was. It did not hit me until I looked at that date and was like, holy crap.
Mhm.
It only ran for 3 seasons, 79 episodes.
Mm-hmm.
Let that
Start-
sink in really quick. A
Right.
cultural phenomenon, a touchstone. You can't find anybody that doesn't at least know the name Star Trek.
Right.
It didn't even make 100 episodes.
Exactly. After we've talked about some of these older shows like Green Acres ran forever and stuff like that, Star Trek only lasted 79 episodes. So it started in Thursdays at the 8:30 to 9:30 block. And then season 3, as it was on a downward spiral as far as ratings go. NBC wasn't crazy about it. They were going to try and move it to Mondays, but Laugh-In was like, back up. And so they moved season 3 to Fridays at 10 p.m.
Oof.
And then you wonder why it got canceled after that.
Yeah.
And everybody from Gene Roddenberry to everybody on the cast was like, yeah, they weren't trying to kill us. Oh, wait, they were.
Yeah.
They should have just done it. But so they gave him this last season. And so that's where I thought of all the jumping the shark kind of shows we've talked about and all the ones we were looking up, this was the only other one that, is streaming in a decent place. That I thought would be fun to talk about. So, now I remember we talked about last week. One of us has not had that much Star Trek in their life. Steven,
That's me.
want to share with the class about that?
Yeah, Star Trek was just never a thing. I don't know why necessarily. When I was growing up, TNG, The Next Generation, was Star Trek, And I had this weird aversion to like crazy makeup, creatures and stuff. Like I didn't like The Fifth Element the first time I watched it when I was young. because of the way the creatures were done. Stuff like the Labyrinth freaked me out, and I'm a huge Jim Henson fan, but like I couldn't watch Neverending Story. There's just something about the vibe of like heavy makeup faces, alien stuff that I just couldn't handle as a kid. So I just never watched it. I had friends that were super into it. Like my best friend across the street, he loved Star Trek and Star Wars. And I didn't like Star Wars either till I was like 13, when the special editions came out. So it just wasn't. We were a very horse-driven family, so it's not like my parents are really into Star Trek. Like if I was going to get anything from them, it was going to be Gunsmoke and Roy Rogers. It wasn't going to be space people. So it just passed me by, and I just never. I knew the characters to some degree, but it just never. It was never in the house. It was never a thing I paid attention to.
Sure.
Yeah, and
All
I
right,
missed
Travis,
out.
what's your Yeah. Travis,
kinda-
what's your history with Trek?
Oh boy, Star Trek. Just give me all the Star Trek you can. I grew up. I remember watching original series. I remember the animated series would play. I think I can't remember what channel I saw it on, but I know I watched the animated series. I was there for Encounter at Farpoint when it debuted. For TNG, I remember having um, VHS recordings of the debuts of DS9 and Voyager. I was all about all Star Trek all the time. I did an art project in like fourth grade, making a paper, like a construction paper cutout of Geordie LaForge, but we didn't have any brown construction paper. So we made him a white guy, and it was his cousin Georgie. Like, it's just so much stuff. I mean, I just all about Star Trek. Loved it all the way. Steven, it sounds like you grew up with an aversion to forehead appliances.
This could be it. Anything with a too large forehead was just I couldn't handle it.
That's like 90% of the makeup effects in Star Trek is just put something on their forehead and maybe a little something on their nose, and you got an alien.
Yeah.
And maybe their ears here and there.
Yeah. Yep. But love Star Trek and all of its cheesy glory.
All right, Amy, what about you? What's your history with Trek?
Yeah, we were a huge TNG family growing up. My uncle drove for Bose Speaker Company, and so he got discounts. So we had the big stand-up Bose speakers with the big subwoofer, and those got turned on. They were hooked up to the TV, and those got turned on for Star Trek, so you could feel the engine in your chest, and it
Nice.
was great. That was appointment television. That's like the definition of appointment television for me,
Mhm.
right? Like,
Mhm.
we'd be like, "Oh, it's Friday night. Let's watch TGIF." You know what I mean? But if it was Star Trek, it was like the whole family, and there was popcorn, but like real popcorn with actual butter, you know?
Yep.
And yeah, yeah, love Star Trek.
Very cool. Yeah, I remember watching TNG pretty much almost religiously for a while. That was my first instance into Trek, and that's the one I followed the most. I never followed the others that much, but I wasn't averse to watching them if they were on. If I was at somebody's house or something like, "Hey, this is on," I was like, "Okay." Um, and I remember seeing episodes of the original series here and there, and just it's Star Trek's one of those things, like I said, a cultural phenomenon. Even if you haven't watched it, you know it because of all the ways people talk about it and have reacted and, done various versions of it in their own way. Like just the
The
film Galaxy Quest, you
Yeah.
know, is
Or
an
the one for me
interesting.
was Zap Brannigan. Like,
Mhm.
intellectually that Zap Brannigan is Kirk, and then you watch the show and you're like, "Oh, jeez, yes. Yes, it
Yeah,
is."
it's not as much of a parody as
No.
you initially thought.
Right. Mhm.
But
And,
it's I mean, Star Trek was just that thing that like it brought. I don't know. There was a certain there was a cheese factor to it. There was a Buck Rogersness to it, but there was also like a legitimacy that it brought to sci-fi on TV
Mhm.
that you didn't see before that. Like it was taking itself seriously, but also not too seriously.
Right.
It was
But even
setting up
John
a.
Roddenberry.
Oh, go ahead. I'm
Go ahead,
sorry,
Steven.
Howdy. It was setting up a world where it's us in the future, and it's got like before then. A lot of TV was stuff that you see normally, like every day. It was sitcoms and westerns and stuff, but it was like us way in the future, not some weird version of us or some like monster aliens coming to Earth. It was us doing something special, like us try the utopian society going out and doing something. Maybe that's inspirational for people to see like so many different types of people flying in the same ship. It was a very diverse show, you know.
Oh yeah.
So I think that
Wasn't
probably
it
a lot of people probably
Well,
wanted
that's
that.
what I was about to say. That Gene Roddenberry was very intentionally progressive in that
Hmm.
sense. Like,
wasn't it
he
like the
wrote.
first primetime interracial kiss?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm. And
Mhm.
in the middle of the 60s, you had a black woman as a prominent character. You had a Russian prominent character together
Mhm.
with these people.
Mhm.
And all of them were on the same level. Like nobody was really tucked down too much unless Scotty was around, but you can blame that on the Scots. Um,
Yeah, but he's just an engineer.
right. It I gotta admit, it's kind of funny watching the old Star Trek because I think I got used to seeing Scotty in the movies as an older, larger person
Mhm.
Yeah.
than
Yep.
a younger, thinner person
Yeah,
more
he
than
like
anybody else.
walked in the door and I was like, look how thin he is. He's just a little
Mhm.
guy.
And
Yeah.
I'm sorry, but DeForest Kelly always looked like he was just bordering on 60.
Yeah.
Yep.
And one of
And
those
then he
faces.
and then he just got old. Like
Yeah.
it was just like
Mhm.
he always looked grizzled, I think would be the,
Yep.
the
Yeah.
term I would use for it.
Well, I mean, if you stood William Shatner up in front of me from that era and didn't tell me who he was, I would be like, "Who's that guy?" You know, because he looks a lot different than he did even 10 years after that. You know, you're like, "Oh
Mhm.
wow, he's definitely changed a lot." It's like he has a completely new face.
Yep.
Mhm.
Which you can see because they didn't do the movies until 10 years after the show was canceled.
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
so it's it's impressive to think about how far this came from a 3-season show and then a movie and then a series of movies to a whole new generation of shows and then it's just been exploding ever since.
Yeah.
I would say not a huge explosion until recent years when CBS decided, "Hey, we should do some more Star Trek stuff." And
Well, I
really
mean,
got people
yes,
on board,
but also
which
like
is
it was fans that brought this back
Yeah.
sure.
because it lasted for 3 seasons. Sometime before or around the time of the motion picture was when they did the animated show,
Mhm.
which wasn't like that ran for a long time. I think that's like a season or 2 at most.
Yeah,
But
it was
the
a season
fans
73 to 74.
Yeah, so that was it was the fans that brought this show back, and they
Mhm.
clamored for it, and it would be like today, us getting, a new, say Firefly, movie, and then it becomes this thing over the next 10 years because 'cause we're right about that time. It's like that's what happened with this. It was fans that kept bringing it back and allowing Gene Roddenberry to continue to play in that sandbox.
Mhm.
Um, and it's kind of impressive when you really get down to it. I don't know how many of you noticed this, but I never made the connection. Like I always knew that Next Generation's opening theme came from Star Trek the Motion Picture.
Yep.
That was where that theme originated. I
Mhm.
never realized that unless it was something in the remastered episode or version that I watched, the bed music on the Enterprise was that same melody. When I was watching this
Okay.
episode, I'm like, "That's the TNG theme. That's the motion picture theme, like, melody playing in the background."
Hmm.
Messed with
I
my
don't
head.
know that I noticed.
Yeah, I didn't think about that, but it's probably I should say, yeah, the remastered version is what you're gonna see on Paramount Plus, and they remastered that
Which, quite honestly, they needed to.
in, like, 2016?
I mean, it
It
looked
was something.
nice.
No, 2006,
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
It was a good looking
Yeah, it
2006,
was.
show.
2007. So, like, because I definitely noticed when we saw the ship and, the actual titles and stuff, I was like, "Dang, that looks
I looked
really
so yeah,
good."
the outside of the ship and I was like, "Wait a minute.
Yeah.
Why does this look so
So, and then
nice?"
after the fact, it was like, "Oh, yeah, they remastered that in 2007," and that's when I was like, "Okay." So
Alright. They
so,
did it subtly.
I think subtle enough, yeah.
Yeah.
Um, so Spock's brain.
I'm excited about this.
So I love that we open with just a bunch of staring. You get
Yeah.
this random spaceship coming and everybody's just staring in directions like, "Hmm,
Slow
hmm,
burn. This was the
hmm."
60s. We didn't need to move that fast. This played out
Yeah.
like a western, you know, with the black hat and the white hat guy, just
Mhm.
kind of walking towards each other or hiding behind a rock with tense music for 15 minutes. I mean, it's just
Yep.
we were so into that level of patience back then.
You got to get to the tension so we can have a commercial break.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly.
But I did love one that ship shows up. They go to red alert, and you get a big old condition alert sign right up there on the wall. It was
Mhm.
like, "Good job, guys." I don't know what you use that for otherwise, but it looks like just condition alert right there in that big old square. Um, and then Scotty's in love with this ship,
Love that.
like
Mhm.
So good. He's
way too
like,
much.
"Get it, ion thrusters. This is great.
Mhm.
Everything's perfect."
I
Yep.
mean, that is Scotty, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
and that's a thing that they carried over in all the properties. Like, he's always fawning over other ships and things, and
When he's
Mhm.
on
I
that
love that.
episode of when he's on the episode of TNG,
Oh,
it's like
yeah.
the cutest thing in the
Oh,
world
it's so
when
good.
Mhm.
he's like in the engine
Yeah.
room. It's so good.
And Jordy's so annoyed with him. And then we get the single lady beaming on the ship, and then she just has her knockout button and just presses it. "No, you go to sleep, people."
That was my favorite thing I've ever seen because everybody just fell in different ways. And
It's
then
so
and
good.
Mhm.
then the continuity errors of their positions when they cut and then went back. I was like, Kirk
Yeah.
didn't fall that way. Kirk was
Mhm.
definitely not in
No.
that position.
And I loved Uhura was just slayed back,
Yeah.
you
It's
know?
like they're all supposed to be passed out, but they're definitely holding themselves up because that's just
It
not
was
how.
Mhm.
it was sick bay that was the best though. 'Cause you
Oh, that
got to
was
see
so
that
good.
nurse's space panties, and that
Yeah,
that was
yeah.
really
Uh-huh.
good.
Yeah.
Let's maybe pick a different camera angle there, buddy.
Yeah.
And then they all come to, and Kirk's like, "Hey, figure out what happened. Where's Spock?" And then as soon as he asks the question, he gets the message from the doctor, good old Bones. It's like, "Kirk, get down here now." So him and Scotty go down, and we find Spock laying on the table. Apparently, they're keeping him alive on life support while he's got the nice little golden knit bandage on his head.
I call BS that Kirk could read that chart and be like, "Wait, that's fully on life support." You don't know. You don't know.
um, yeah. Well, not that
It's
that chart
special.
was.
It's a special medical chart that, like, it's like slightly psychic paper. It just shows him what he needs.
It showed all the things. It
Yeah.
was like cell growth, lung
Mhm.
Mhm.
capacity. Like what?
Right?
Well, because we gotta use it for everything,
Yeah.
so this
Mhm.
is just what it looks like.
This is the capsule that fixes people.
Yep.
Mhm.
And so Bones has trouble getting it out, and Kirk is just like, What's wrong? What's the mystery?" Bones is just like, "His brain is gone."
They knew how dumb that was. They
Oh
knew
my
Oh,
when
gosh.
they were
absolutely.
saying the words.
And they went so hard.
They did.
Let
They
me
were
tell
like,
you.
"We don't
So
care. Let's
one more
go."
one more time. Not only this is the episode that most people say is the worst,
Mhm.
including the actors. Like Leonard Nimoy is quoted saying, "I'm embarrassed that we made this."
And
Why?
it's
All
the
he did
best.
was sit
So
and
good.
stare off at
No,
nothing the whole episode. Like,
he didn't.
Leonard Nimoy had the easiest job in this episode. Just
He
sit
really
there.
did. But an actor like Leonard Nimoy probably wants to be doing more than just sitting there. So I can
Probably.
understand that. And so they're explaining this, and am I the only one that caught at the beginning where Bones sounds like his body could just live on for however
Yeah.
long?
So that
Yeah.
part, right? Because he's like, "No, it seems to be doing everything on its own. I don't know, seems fine." And then he's like, "Well, how long have we got?" "Well, if it was us, forever, I guess, but for a Vulcan, I don't know, 24 hours, I guess." I feel
Well,
like what
no,
happens
like
here.
I don't know. Kirk's gonna find that brain. I'm gonna
Yeah.
find it in this galaxy somewhere. Let me go find it. And then Bones is like, "Oh yeah, by the way, 24 hours."
Yeah. And I feel like this is because he was worried that Kirk is going to get distracted without a deadline. Like, they've been together long enough that he knows that if he's not like, "Hey, you have 24 hours," he's gonna, like, get distracted by the next alien in a miniskirt, and then they're never gonna get there.
Mhm.
Spock's fine, right? He can wait. He's just we'll get it. We'll get there.
Yeah.
We'll get to his brain when we need
It's
Again,
to.
fine.
He's
Yeah.
got the golden knit bandage on his head. He's
Yeah.
fine.
Yeah. And all
Um,
his parts seem to
It's
be
not
doing what they're
holding
supposed
anything
to.
in.
mhm.
How they did not explain how his body got from the bridge to sick bay.
I was
There was
assuming
They
no
did
that
explain
explanation
that.
of that.
No, I think
Just
they said that they did the taking the brain out down there, and
Yeah.
that's where Bones found him.
okay.
Yeah.
Because I'm pretty sure because I watched it twice, and I think I had that same question, and it was like, oh, okay, wasn't
I
so
like the
big a
way
deal,
she
but
just
still.
pats Spock's head.
Mhm.
This brain is
I
the one I
mean,
want.
This one.
I will say it was nice of them to take the brain out, put the top back on, and clean everything up. But like
Mhm.
Bones said, there was no bleeding or anything.
No,
So
they didn't even have to shave his head. I mean, they just
mm-mm.
Yeah.
is good.
That's impressive.
I know, right? Don't worry about the
So
hair.
they magically are able to figure out the uh trail that
They
the other
follow the
ship left.
ion trail
Hmm.
Yep.
The
because it's
ion
an
trail.
ion propelled engine, which is
Mhm.
what we were fawning over not
Right.
5 minutes ago. So like, okay, we'll go. That's
It's
fine.
So they're following the
it's not
It's
trail.
enough.
it's not Star Trek without techno babble. It's
It's
ionic
hand wavy
Mhm.
propulsion,
enough.
and it
Yep.
gives you an ionic trail, and we can follow that. Good enough.
Fantastic.
Mhm. So they follow it. Kirk just goes back and forth pacing the bridge. And it's like, yes, we've got it. And then Sulu turns around. We lost it. And then they're trying to figure out, well, what happened? They happen to be in a system with some livable planets. So it's got
Because
to
we
be one
already
of
know
these.
that these people breathe air like our air, which they
Mhm.
called the usual, which that's closed-minded of you, Kirk. It's our usual, but let's not.
Well, I mean, he also assumes everyone speaks English when he just starts talking to them. So Kirk's
Yeah.
not
Right.
really, you know,
He's like he's
So,
the ultimate American
he
tourist.
really is.
yeah,
Tell
good thing
me,
he's captain. So they
females.
debate over which of these planets they should go to, and eventually just pick the one that's got um, what is it? Regulated something coming out
Yeah,
that they find.
some sort of energy fluctuation
Yeah,
thing.
the
Yeah.
most least
There's a
likely
lot of
planet.
energy fluctuations in Star Trek. That's like your biggest
Hmm.
one.
Mhm. Oh
Regular
yeah, yeah.
fluctuations. So a hunch, Captain? Yeah, a hunch.
Basically,
Okay.
That's fine. We're out of
it was
time,
the one.
Um,
so
It was the one planet of the three that shouldn't have any real like life on it or any
yeah,
civilization.
yeah.
mhm.
But because there was some random reading, Kirk is like, "But has to be it,"
Yeah.
Right.
because
The other two were much better candidates, but they're like, well, they're what'd they say? One of the planets was like the year 1645 or
Yeah,
something.
14 something. And I was
Yeah,
like, how do
Mhm.
you know that off the top
right.
of your head,
That's
Kirk?
crazy. From just
Yeah.
We
like the
don't
radio
have the
waves.
data pads yet, right?
Mhm.
Like we can't pull up this information like they do on TNG all the time. Because that's fine. They pull up obscure facts all the time, and that's fine because they basically have an iPhone. And
Yeah.
or they have
so,
or they have
that's
Right.
data.
fine.
Yeah.
Yeah. Kirk, you don't know this.
No,
That's my whole this
I
whole
will
episode. I
say
was like, you don't know.
I learned a new word with this episode that I had not heard before. Glaciated.
Oh
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
I didn't realize that was a word. Got to
No.
be honest. So they go to the primitive glaciated planet,
Mm-hmm.
start looking around, and they get introduced to the primitives there with
This
very interesting outfits and haircuts.
is definitely just a band that they hired because that's what I thought of. I'm like, that hair, those guys are playing instruments at some pub nearby later tonight because that's
Hmm.
the hair of the bangs cut straight across the
Yep.
front and then just like a
Hmm.
bob. This is what this is
And a
what this
beard.
culture looks like, and a big beard, and the most 1960s outfit you've ever seen. I'm
Yeah.
like with the
Let's
fur
wear
on the
fur on
boots.
just one arm.
Yeah. My favorite part about these people is that Kirk finds himself entirely unable to communicate with them because they don't understand what women are. And
Right.
Kirk's like, I'm out. I have
Yeah.
nothing to
Yep.
talk about here.
We've exhausted what I
We
know.
Yep.
I can't talk to you. You don't know women. It just doesn't
Yeah.
work.
Where it's
It
over
was
now.
it was the genuine confusion on Kirk's face when he's like, "Women, females, like a mate." And
A
the guy's just
companion.
looking at him like he's got 3 heads, and Kirk's like, I got nothing.
He
I'm out.
just runs out. We
They
can't even
landed in
find
space
common
San
ground.
Francisco, and
Yeah.
now they've got nowhere to go.
Yep. And then Chekhov all of a sudden finds a signal of something in the ground,
Mm,
and they
that's
go and
fine.
look, and they find what is apparently a trap for these dudes, for the primitive dudes that has food and tools. I did like that Kirk immediately spotted that. Like, he may be a womanizer, but he's not an idiot all the time.
True.
So,
He was like, "Oh, no, there's no way those guys made these."
Mhm.
mhm,
They don't even know what women are.
right? So they figure they gotta trip this trap, whatever it is, and figure out what's going on. So we need to bring Spock because whatever's going on, he needs to be close.
That
And
was the
so
best part. Oh Lord.
Well,
Dr.
no,
Bones and Mr.
so
Spock
that's the thing though.
beam
He didn't
down.
know that Spock was coming. He just wanted Bones. He calls up to the ship and is like, "Send down Dr.
No,
McCoy."
because
And
he
McCoy
said to
shows up with Spock.
they had the conversation to bring Spock
Yeah.
because
Mm.
McCoy didn't wanna do it, and he's like, "No, we have to do it so that when we find the brain, you can put it back," and he's like, "I don't know how to do that," which is my favorite thing
Yeah.
about McCoy, as opposed to, like, a lot of not all, but a lot of the other Star Trek doctors, like Dr. Pulaski, my least favorite from TNG, who was there when, what's her Gates McFadden was having her baby. She was like, "I can do anything. I can replace Worf's spine, whatever. Hippocratic oath my ass. Let's go." And but McCoy's like, I don't know. I don't know anything about brain surgery.
Yeah.
Brain
Damn
is a
it, Jim. I'm a
complex
doctor,
organ.
not a
Nobody knows how to do this.
doctor.
Arms flailing. Nobody knows how to do
So
this.
much flailing.
It's a Vulcan brain too. Like, I mean,
Mhm.
ugh,
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
different.
true. McCoy was like a field medical
Yeah.
officer, right? Like that's
Yeah.
really what he was. He was your field medic in the army. That's just like, we'll stop you from bleeding more.
Yeah, we'll
Yes.
rub
That's
some dirt
that's
on
like
it. You'll be all
the
right.
Mhm.
extent of my knowledge is
Yeah.
to just stop the
Which,
thing that's happening right now and get you
my
back
gosh,
up.
one little tangent. If there's one thing J.J. Abrams nailed in those movies,
Mhm.
it was Bones.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good lord.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Carl Urban did very well
Mhm.
in that role. It's fantastic.
But back to this. So they bring Spock with his funky little almost headphones that
So we know
just come to
nothing
his
about
ears.
brains, but we do know how to turn
Oh,
a brainless corpse into
a
a
remote
A
control
robot.
mobile.
person,
He's a
Yeah.
Remote control.
robot.
which,
Rock'em
what was it?
sock'em
There was some
robot.
trivia
With
that exact remote was used later on DS9 or something for a
Oh, I
similar purpose.
completely believe that. I also loved
So,
the like clockwork noises whenever Spock would
Yeah.
move.
mhm.
I thought I was, like, hearing things the first time, and I was like, "Why? Why
Yeah.
does he have gears all of a sudden?"
I
Bones
I
is just
wanna say it
driving
was
him
the
around
remote,
like
but
a race
still
car.
I love that a future remote or whoever has all the clicking. I'm like,
Like, if he's in, like, a suit, right? Like, if we put him in, like, an exosuit and that's what's moving him, I would go, "Okay." But
right?
no, just headband, remote, let's go.
Mhm.
Grinding gears, let's go.
So they take him into the cave, they trip the trap, and they realize it's some kind of elevator. Which one of my favorite little jokes was Bone saying, "Call Chekhov, tell him to send my stomach down."
Yeah, that was pretty good. I love that Chekhov is wandering around with the two red shirts,
Yeah.
like,
Uh-huh.
and goes and uses the magic rock heater gun. And that
Yeah,
was that
the
would
phaser.
be I want one. I just got back from a camping trip,
I know.
and I'm like,
Yeah.
that'd be kind of nice to have. Now, nothing beats an open
Mhm.
fire, but also heating up a rock, that's okay.
Yeah.
Mhm.
That's
Mhm.
okay. I'd take it.
Yeah. I do like how they made a little joke earlier about Chekhov being Russian. He's like, "It's only 40 here. It's nice." And
Yeah,
Kirk's like,
alright,
"You've
so
got
that
some
was the
thick
other
skin,
part.
dude."
We're in space using Fahrenheit.
Mm.
Mm, mm,
Okay,
mm.
we're in space in a show for, at the time, mostly Americans. Do you
No, I
expect them
know.
to understand anything but Fahrenheit at
Just
that
make up
point?
something else. You just
Yeah.
use any number.
Yeah.
It's just
Qubits.
space
They
numbers.
got
Yeah,
that they got that better that they fixed that in later
Yeah,
series,
yeah.
right.
thankfully.
So they go down. Elevator opens. There's another lady who's not the one we saw before, but she's got the wrist controller. But this time, Kirk's faster with a phaser, and you see that great phaser technology of just screen goes green, boo, and knocks her out.
Mhm.
Which is
I
funny to
had
me
to.
considering Chekhov had his phaser and they did a little beam thing from the phaser, but they couldn't get that to work at people?
No, I actually had to
Rock's not gonna
rewind it the
move.
first time. The first time they did it against the giant fur-wearing
Mhm.
mech, they did the same, and I, like, backed it up. I'm like, "Did I see that right? Did they just, like, flash the green across the entire screen and then" okay, yep, they did.
Yep. They have like one little dot on whoever it is that gets hit. But yeah. So, but again, a budget TV show,
Mhm.
especially third season where its budget was slashed more. Yeah, I'll get it to them.
What it means. That's all that matters. You get
Right.
it.
Yeah.
Mhm. So they knock her out, try to figure out where to go, and then pick up Spock on the communicator.
Yeah.
It's just
And
like, "Hey,
Spock's like, "Oh,
Captain."
hey,
I
is
don't
Yeah.
know where
Bones
I
with you?
am.
Can I talk to somebody else? Is literally anyone else here? Yeah?
Yep.
Okay, great. That's
And he
very
hears everybody
hopeful.
else. It's like, "Oh, hey, doctor. How you doing?" And as they're, homing in on where they think Spock's brain is, they meet up with the lady and the original lady that we saw in this episode and a couple guards. She's quicker on the draw this time. Knocks
Mhm.
everybody out but Spock
Well,
because
because he doesn't have a brain is my theory.
right.
Like, he's A, no threat, and
Mhm.
B, there's no brain for it to work on. Because that's
Right.
how I'm gonna pretend that it works.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the brain is
You've
what
already
tells you
given
you are feeling the
Yeah,
pain.
yeah.
So there's nothing there
You
to feel the pain. Why would you feel any pain?
yeah,
you just gave more explanation than the show did, so
True.
Yes.
that's fine.
But welcome to science fiction.
yep, it's why we love it.
And
Mhm.
then they're woken up in a room with more of these ladies who are feeding fruit to some of the gentlemen in this room.
Just randomly.
Hmm.
They're
All of the
pets.
dudes have a funky belt on now. Big.
The training belt.
Mhm.
I
Hmm.
took notes. I took copious notes. Okay, right. Mhm. Oh, button on your cuff, right, okay.
Uh huh. And Kirk and them are asking her, "What'd you do with Spock's brain? We know you came on the ship." Um, they keep trying to talk to her, and Bones is the only one that immediately figures out they have the brains of a kid. You can't talk to them. You can't reason with them.
They're not engineers. Where's the person in charge? I wanna talk to him.
Right. Who runs
We've
this place?
we've dealt with a lot of misogyny on this show so far, but this
Hmm.
one, it was awful, but also it was just so funny. Like, it just
Yeah.
I couldn't even be mad, like, I can't be mad. It was hysterical. "Ah, they're not
Yeah.
engineers." "Oh, of
Because,
course, they need a man brain."
Right.
yeah. But then you
Right.
get one of the m- most talked about quotes is when they keep asking her about Spock's brain, and she just yells, "Brain and brain. What is brain?"
Yeah.
It's like, okay, men don't know what women are,
Mhm.
and apparently they don't know what brains are either
Yeah.
Are
because
you
they
no
don't understand.
morgue or I morgue? What was that
Hmm.
all about? Like, are those guys the morgues? I was so
Yeah, so they
confused.
did
Uh-huh.
like a time machine thing, except instead of like the worker class and the elite class, it was men and women,
You
Yep.
know,
Mhm.
that's
which
largely
was
less effective.
wild.
Yeah,
Hmm.
you're
Yeah.
not gonna make
Right.
it very far with that kind of
Well, they
separation.
clearly, I mean, they've clearly figured it out
I
a little bit.
guess.
I like it. I like the idea. They catch him in the cave, they bring him down, they feed him fruit, they keep him, they train him with the belts. I assume there's breeding happening if that's how that this is surviving, and then
Right.
if they're males, they just punt them back out in the snow and hope that the other guys pick them
Hmm.
up. I love it. It's
All
great.
right, yeah, this is a good
It
system.
Which
apparently it's
the f-
apparently worked for them for thousands of years,
Yeah.
so
It's like a Rick
apparently.
and Morty plot that is basically the same exact thing.
I could just imagine the dudes up there like, "Oh, here's another baby. Guess we ought to keep him."
Where did
These
babies come from? That cave, actually. We don't know why. Just as soon
It's
as they can
also here that
toddle, they just send
they
them
just
out.
show up.
uh-huh. I also like that this was about the halfway point, so we get after the commercial break an update from Sulu on the Enterprise
Yeah.
for like 2 seconds. That's it. I mean, he's just like, yeah, they're down there. We're still monitoring up here, waiting to hear.
The end.
In case you were wondering what
That's
was
it.
going on the ship,
Ship's
Sulu's got
log.
it under control.
Yeah.
Ship's log, Lieutenant Sulu. No clue what the hell's going on. Back to you, Jim.
Waiting to hear.
I feel like they probably
And then I
had some
wrote
sort
down-
of contracted amount of time they have to work on any given episodes. They had to slip them in there. They're like, well, we got him here and we owe it to him. So let's just make a scene real quick.
And then the boys managed to get their gear back by having a little tussle with their guards. Scotty keeps getting literally thrown around by one of them.
Oh
Like
yeah.
I
Oh,
noticed
Scotty,
like 2 or 3 times he's just thrown. Like
Scotty's
Kirk and
getting
Bones get some
tossed
hit
around.
in.
We got Scotty getting tossed around like a rag doll. We got the Kirk maneuver.
Mhm.
Right? Two-fisted axe handle to the back.
Yeah.
And Robo Spock is just sitting there the whole time, stone straight, while all this chaos goes on around him. And I love that. Like, I can just imagine being Leonard Nimoy in that moment. Like,
Oh
I
yeah.
just have to sit here. and
I
watch
mean,
all
if
this
you're
happen.
sitting there thinking about how stupid it is, I guess that works, right? You're like,
Yeah.
this is like the dumbest thing.
Yeah, because I've heard stories about how professional Nimoy is. Like, I remember a story about him auditioning for the role of Galvatron in Transformers the movie, and that somebody heard him going into a bathroom and like doing vocal stuff just for the audition. And they're like, we hired you for you. You've got the part. This isn't an audition, but okay.
No,
Like,
I have a deep love of Cambridge, Massachusetts' own Leonard Nimoy. He is
So,
a delight.
but I did love, like, at this point, they beat the guys up, they get their stuff back, and you alluded to it just a minute ago, Amy. Probably my favorite sexist line from Scott. Those women could never get anything as complex as this to be. That takes engineering genius.
Yeah.
But there's no sign of engineering genius in any of those women.
Now listen, all right. Now, now I'm standing with him on the fact that the women they have met clearly do not seem to have the chops. But also, we already know from the readings that this is like a huge underground complex. So shut up. You don't know.
Right? So they start talking to Spock again because they've got their communicators. And they're just trying to they go back and forth with Spock. I like this part because Spock's like, you should go back to the ship. There's no way to fix this, but we're going to try and get you. I don't think you should. There's no way to fix this, but you're almost out of time. Beam us a signal. Acknowledged. He just immediately was like, oh, yeah, sure.
Oh yeah, all right. Sure, of course.
And then they follow him to where he is. Apparently, the brain is in a box connected to everything. Leader woman is there, just hanging out. And she does the whole pain thing again because they've still got their belts on. And they manage to not be completely knocked out this time, enough to control Spock to go over to her like an automaton and hit the red button to release their belts.
Mm-hmm.
Because Spock's voice told them that's how they could stop it, just to hit the
Yeah.
red button.
Yeah,
Right.
he went on the internal wiki and looked it
Yep.
up.
Mhm. And then we get a bunch of talkie back and forth about how this works. What's it? How did you do this? How did you do this? How does this? And we find out that there's a intelligence in the machines. Spock's telling us, "Hey, there's all this data and knowledge in the machine, and they get it from over here." And there's a big glass helmet thingy with a bunch of metal pieces sticking out.
Mm-hmm.
And they talk about how dangerous it is, and then they immediately put the lady in it. Like,
Against
screw
her
it.
will. She very much does not want to do this.
Right.
No.
And
Exactly.
they're like, no, you gotta go.
Mm-hmm.
What?
Luckily for them and for her, nothing harmful happens, but she then has the knowledge. And it's like it turned on her brain, basically.
Yeah.
I wondered if they weren't trying to go between having some other intelligence in the knowledge or just her having the knowledge. Sometimes I was back and forth. It's like, what exactly are they doing? But she's much more forceful with Kirk at this point. Um, and good enough that she gets his gun
Yeah.
and is like, get out of here now. And then probably one of my favorite things, Scotty pretends to faint, distracts her well enough for Kirk just to take the gun right back.
Worst. Oh, that made me laugh so much because it's just terrible. It's like he barely faints, and she.
Uh-huh.
Whoa! It's so bad.
And then they know they have the knowledge. They can get the knowledge, and it lasts for 3 hours, she says. So Bones
Of
is
your
like,
hours,
hey,
which I assume that part of her infinite knowledge is that she knows how to convert to she knows how to convert time from
right,
there to
time.
Right.
us. Yeah.
sure. Well, at this point, she has all the knowledge. So, but Bones is like, hey, let me do it, and then I can fix Spock. And there's a little back and forth. It could kill you. It could not. I don't know, doctor.
Yeah, because she
But he
won't
does it
do it,
anyways.
right? Because they did that back and forth, like, you have to do it. And she's like, no, but you have to do it. No.
Mhm.
Yes. And I'm like, this is killing a lot of minutes. Like, this is that
Mhm.
this is the D&D campaign moment where the DM's like, no, this character isn't gonna give. And the play character is like, but you have to. And then
Mhm.
just, I thought that was amazing. I
Yeah.
loved it. Good time killer.
Uh-huh. Then Bones puts the see-through helmet on, apparently gets the knowledge, and thinks, oh, it's so easy. A child could do it.
Well, good
Cut
news
to
because you're gonna do it.
Yeah.
So
mhm.
Why didn't
Cut
I
to
think
brain
of this?
surgery. And
it gets so good from here.
This scene
Oh,
is my
God.
favorite scene
Oh,
in
God.
all television. It was unbelievable.
Oh,
Leonard Nimoy on a humanoid-shaped table
yep.
with a big old wall up to his head. You still see some of his hair though, so it's not
Oh, yeah.
not too far back. But it's there, and the doctor's just going to town. Like Scotty said, he's operating at warp speed.
Which is the
He's-
best because Scotty's just there, like, leaning over. He's gonna drop, like, a junior mint in there or something.
And
Uh-huh.
Bones is taking like random implements from behind. Like you see him just taking something, like he's
Mhm.
inserting just over and over little metal pieces of stuff because you can't see a lot, but
Mhm.
you can definitely see that he is taking stuff in one hand, doing something with it, turning, grabbing something else. Like, what has he
And
got going on back there?
and then while he's doing that, we have Kirk over here with our leader lady turning on the Kirk charm, explaining to her how society needs to be. You go up there with the men, and y'all be together like you should have been. This weird arrangement shouldn't have ended like this.
I'd have just taken Kirk's brain. I'm like, no, you know what? Yeah.
I mean, look, this is before the Prime Directive, right?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Not that Kirk would have cared about the
Right.
Prime Directive. He would
No.
have just been like, yeah, y'all just need to make whoopee constantly.
Mhm.
That's just what you do. But
Here, let me show you.
Yeah.
Right.
yeah,
Like, I'm surprised they didn't get to the she was asking, "How will we stay warm?" It's like, "Well, there's ways to stay warm. Let me tell you."
Well, that was the other part, right? Because they talk about I think it was like at one point when it's like, I think it was while they were captured, right? And they were talking about how the Mog up top there refer to them as like the bringers of pain and pleasure.
Mhm.
And was it Bone says something to Kirk about like, well, you noticed the pleasure part, and he's like, oh, I noticed.
Yeah.
Oh God,
Not even
not
trying to be
subtle.
subtle anymore.
No,
Nope.
no.
So,
nope, not a bit.
again, Kirk's over here with Kirk Charm trying to explain it. And then you see Scotty seeing Bones, and Bones isn't doing so good, and Scotty's the one that notices. He's like, Bones? Captain? Captain?"
He
And
gets real
Bones is
sweaty.
Yeah, Bones just
yeah.
starts sweating. There's nothing
Uh-huh.
clean about this room at all, while
No.
Spock's brain is just out in the
And
world.
Mhm.
can we just talk about DeForest Kelly, this whole scene of operating, his facial features and his eyes just going up, going down, going up, going down.
He's
Then
doing
we
he's doing a lot of acting with his face. It's
Oh,
not
yeah.
necessarily good acting, but he's doing a lot of
He's doing so much of
right.
it.
The script just says
It's
be in deep concentration, and he's like, "Oh, okay, I can do that." And his eyebrows just up,
Mhm.
down, up, down.
but then he starts losing it, and then he's got some instrument up around his mouth and face. I'm
Right.
like, dude, you're gonna poke your own eye out.
I watched him keep putting his fingers
Careful.
close to his mouth. I'm like, dude, you're working on a brain. Like, you're a
Mhm.
doctor. This isn't knowledge that the controller gave you. This is just knowledge you have as you don't put
Right.
your hands on your face while you're operating on
Well,
someone.
I mean, let's be honest. We don't see what's on the other side of that wall. They could have some kind of
They got a
thing
real
there
good HEPA
keeping
filter back
everything,
there.
Yeah, exactly.
Sure.
you know,
Yeah, that's it.
totally
There's a
safe.
sterilization field
Right.
around the brain.
What
Yeah.
that blue light is.
Yeah.
And so he's having trouble, and they decide, what is it? Kirk tells him, "Hey, why don't you attach his mouth? See if Spock can help you out." The guy on the table who does not have his brain completely connected is going to help out the doctor connect the brain.
Sure, why not?
Yeah, go for it.
And so they do.
And then it becomes me and my dad trying to fix anything, right? Right? Like, is it working yet? No, try another one. Okay, how about now? Yeah, no, it's doing something now. I don't do that again. Like that? Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that was perfect. Because that's pretty much what it was. Except
Yeah.
it was like Spock barely talking. Like, do a little bit more to the left. Okay, there we go, doctor. Now try this.
All right, now you have to hook up every nerve in my body. I'll let you
Uh-huh.
know when it's working.
And you do that by testing every nerve. Here's your pinky finger.
Let me poke it.
There we go. Here's my wrist. Oh, yep, that works. Elbow. Yep, that's working. Good job.
Fantastic.
And
Perfection.
then they kind of skip through all that, luckily. Thank the
Well, I
maker.
mean, anything's possible during the cutaway.
Right.
Yeah. It's Vulcan brain. It's fine.
Exactly.
Mhm. And then Spock sits up and he's fine. And not only is he fine, he's super happy to figure out what's been going on this whole time.
Which
And
was
just
cute.
Mhm.
This was
just goes
that,
right
like,
into it. It's fascinating. A glacial event. They got separated into these two different societies. And then you get Bones with Bones has two excellent lines.
Mhm.
Earlier, while he's reattaching the brain, he says, "I'll never live this down. The Vulcan is telling me how to operate." And then afterwards, he's like, as Spock's like all giddy explaining what happened, it's like, "I knew I shouldn't have." And they're like, "What's that?" Reconnected his mouth. And Spock
That
just
the
does
only
the
one who has
eyebrow.
any clue of what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
Let him have this. You don't care anymore. You're like, no, it's fine. We just destroyed their
Uh-huh.
entire way of life. Like, whatever. I
Right.
don't care why.
Also, so
And
much for retaining whatever knowledge he was supposed to get.
Yeah.
Oh,
That
yeah,
didn't
'cause
stick.
yeah,
he's gonna bring it back to the world. Look, you can take brains
Mhm.
out and
He was
put
like,
brains
well,
in
he
with
did
this
say
knowledge.
maybe. He said maybe.
Yeah.
Right.
yeah, he said maybe
Maybe.
I can, but I love like Spock coming out of it just giddy with all the knowledge he's had and all like
Mhm.
the experience he's had because it's so Spock
Yeah.
to just be like
Right.
this knowledge and information and it was awesome and oh my god and da 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 and everyone's just like it's okay Spock calm down
Sure.
it's cool it's cool
Go
Yep.
tell
Um,
Sulu.
And
He asked. He
this
asked me to tell you to tell him.
Mhm. And that's pretty much the end of that episode. Just
There's a
like,
good
okay,
group
cool.
laugh. I love a group laugh.
Oh yeah.
yes
At the end of a sitcom, how have we not had a group laugh at the end of an episode yet? But I'm pretty sure we haven't.
Yeah.
and it took us
Fantastic.
until Star Trek to get it
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
It's unlikely.
Woohoo.
Yep. So yeah, that was Spock's brain. Again, after this episode, ratings went down, Star Trek was canceled, but it still blew up anyways. So
It just pulled a
can't
Obi-Wan. If you strike me down, I'll become more powerful than you could possibly imagine.
Yep,
And that's
pretty
what
much.
happened.
Mhm.
Okay, Steven, after watching this episode, what do you think?
I love Star Trek. I love it. I love this episode. I love the 2 episodes I watched. I think we talked about last week. I had started kind of going through it, just be like, what's all this about? This era of television is just mine. Just like
Mhm.
the I Dream of Genies and the Dragnets and the Star Trek, like this aesthetic of weird pink and highlighted greens and everything's on a sound stage. Like I love it. Want more. This was great.
All right.
Yeah.
Amy, what'd you think of this one?
It was so good. Like, yeah, it's weird. But that does not make it less amazing. Because I am from the next generation era. So like my knowledge of TOS is pretty high, but like my actual experience of it is a little less. Because when I was a
Mhm.
kid, it was a little more boring, right? Like it
Mhm.
was just not good. Like I didn't get it. But now I get it and it is incredible.
Yep. Travis, what'd you think?
Same. I mean, I am a TNG child, but I definitely watched original series quite a bit, and but the same sort of thing. Like it kind of came off as a little boring as a kid. It wasn't as action packed, but watching it now, love all of it. I mean, right down to like the ridiculous overacting of any time anyone gets hurt, like
Uh-huh.
just sprawling and rolling on the floor, and like
Just
you can
falling
tell
over and
they all know how silly what they're doing is, and they are just going
it
for
doesn't
it, and I
matter.
I
Yep.
love it
Yeah.
so much.
Mhm. And I love that this episode has just about everything that is standard Star Trek. You've got Scotty just oogling over whatever technology is around. When Spock is Spock, he is Spock.
Mhm.
Even brain Spock in the middle of the planet. So, like, logically,
Yep.
you shouldn't do this. You should leave. And they're like, Spock, we're gonna be here for you. You've got Bones complaining left and right.
Oh yeah.
And then you've
And you
got
have
Kirk.
Uhura do the like turn around and then like, oh, so this is going to be an actual conversation. All right, well, let me tell you about what's going on here and
Mhm.
taking out of the earpiece because she cannot handle them doing this. It's just a Domino's ad.
Mhm.
She's got to turn off the
Yep.
podcast. And
You got a little bit of Sulu being, great as Sulu, doing his
Mhm.
thing, sitting in the captain's chair when he needs to. You got a little bit of Chekhov, get a little bit of that Russian humor. I can stand the cold; it's no problem.
Nuclear
Um,
whistles.
but still, just the craziest plot. Yes, we took Spock's brain out of his body
It's
somehow.
like the second craziest plot because
Hmm.
someday we're going to make Steven watch The Voyage Home.
All
And it's
right.
going to be the best thing ever.
I'm ready.
Yes, dear listener, after I announced it last week that we were doing this episode, we kind of talked a good bit off air about how much we want Steven to watch everything Star Trek,
Yeah.
and we want to be there for it.
Yeah, take me on a journey. I'm ready.
Hmm. All right.
Mm.
So that was Spock's brain. Now, if you want to let us know about your experience with Star Trek, what you thought about this episode, you can always email us at thosewerethedayshow@gmail.com. Did we check it this week? Travis, did you check?
I am checking the email inbox right now.
So in about
Okay.
30 seconds, we can say, yes, we did check it.
Right. You can also talk to us on Twitter at Those Days Show. I don't think I saw many responses on Twitter either about Star Trek.
I didn't see any tweets this
Um,
time, no.
yeah.
Sadly,
So
no emails, but I did check.
okay. Well, feel free to send those along after listening to this and watching the episode yourself, because we would
Mhm.
love to hear back from you. Um, you know, like Darkness Files in the chat has been uh cracking the quips with us as well.
It's
So
been very fun.
thank you, Darkness Files. You're also always welcome to view us recording live. We do it every Monday night at 9 p.m. Eastern on twitch.tv/2dorkstv. And then usually about a day or so later, it gets released as a podcast. Lieutenant Commander Steven does a good job getting it out. You can find it at anchor.fm/those were the days show or whatever podcatcher you use. It usually is there for you. Um, so that's been Star Trek. Steven,
Oh,
What
yeah.
are we watching for next week?
So I had an episode written on this spreadsheet until right before we started the show tonight. And it was a great episode. It followed my definition of jumping the shark as in just bonkers plot. But it was too good. It was too good of an episode of television, and I'm like, I can't do it. It turned out that it was early in the seasons for this show, and I'm like, no. It can't use an iconic episode of TV as a jump the shark episode. So I went looking around. So we're going in blind. I've never watched this episode of TV, so this should be good. Laverne and Shirley. We're
Ooh.
getting into that. Season 8, episode 2, Window on Main Street. I did a little bit of research, and apparently this is when the show is considered to be going downhill because Laverne and Shirley leave Milwaukee and move to Manhattan. And
Ah.
so that's kind of a jump the shark thing when you change location, add characters,
Mhm.
change location, move sets around. Anytime you make a big change like that is usually a jump the shark thing. And I think Shirley stuck around for the show for a while after this, but not very long. And then I think she was the one that bounced first.
Mhm.
So I'm excited to see how it goes, what it's all about. But I watched a few minutes of it and I was already pretty excited about it. So it might not even be bad TV. We'll just have to
Nice.
find out. But Laverne and Shirley is definitely a favorite of mine. It's a spinoff of Happy Days, so it was one of those that was also in contention for running last theme. But yeah, I'm excited to get to it. And the episode I was gonna do before I found this one, that's going back in the back pocket there. I'm looking forward to that at
Nice.
some point. Yeah, but it'll be
Where
good.
can we watch it?
You can watch it on YouTube. That was the only place I was able to find it. I'll put a link in the show notes of this episode so you can go check it out. But again, that's season 8, episode 2 of Laverne and Shirley.
Nice. And we'll tweet that out too, so you
Yep.
can find it there if that helps. All right. So I think that will do it for us tonight. Prepare for beaming as we leave you and prepare for next week's voyage. For Commander Amy, Lieutenant Commander Stephen, and Lieutenant Commander Travis, this is Captain Audie saying, live long and prosper. This has been Those Were the Days.